Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Hello friends, my warm regards to all. Today we are going to talk about Greek tragedy. Tragic drama keeps a very good amount of importance in the history of literature, especially if we talk about tragedy. So today we are going to talk about Greek tragedy. If we talk about the literal meaning of tragedy, tragedy in its literal meaning a sad or an unlucky event. But for the students of literature, for the teachers of literature, this term has a very specific, very specialized meaning. And this meaning is, as you can read, dramatic representations of a serious action which eventuate in disastrous conclusion for the protagonist, that means the chief actor. That is why a tragedy is not merely a sad or unlucky event. It means, Hamlet is not tragedy because it has so many sudden and unnatural death. It is a tragedy because it is dramatic representation of a serious action. And at the end of this drama, Hamlet, the protagonist, the hero of that play, it suffers from the disastrous results. So better for the word tragedy, we refer to the better word tragic drama. When we say tragedy in literature, it means tragic drama. It is a literary composition written to be performed by actors. A tragedy is primarily meant to be performed. It has a central character which we call protagonist, who is ultimately going to suffer from the disaster. Tragedy stresses the helplessness of human fortune. His disaster in life is brought about by his own flow of character as well as by divine forces or by what we call fortune. But all the tragedies are not pessimistic in its outlook. There are some other good forces also which we can see in tragedy. If we talk about the beginning of Greek tragedy, the tragedy saw its golden period in the time of Greeks, in the country of Greece. As we all know, Greeks have a very rich heritage of culture and history. As we all know, democracy was also founded in Greece. Tragic drama or tragedy, it also had its beginning in Greece, in ancient Greece, during the 5th century before Christ. You can have a look at the Greek theatre. Here, all the Greek tragedies, rather all the type of Greek drama was performed. In the time of 5th century before Christ, there were 3 great Greek dramatists. They wrote very good tragedies, full of power and full of beauty. If we name them, the first one was Aeschylus, then Sophocles and Euripides. Have a look at the first great dramatist of Greek tragedies. It was Aeschylus. Aeschylus is the dramatist whose some of the dramas have been survived. They are still played and watched by the audience, modern audience. Another one is Sophocles. Sophocles also was among these 3 great tragedians. His famous drama were Oedipus and Antigone, which are still played and enjoyed even by the modern theatre. The third one in this group of three is Euripides, who was the youngest of them all, and many of his plays have survived and they are still enjoyed by the modern theatre. Now we go to the origin of Greek drama. Originally, in this time, in the ancient time, the Greek tragedies were written and performed at the place called Dionysia. And what is that Dionysia? It was a place where, in remembrance of Dionysus, which is a Greek god of wine and merrymaking, revelry, they used to perform, used to hold drama festivals where they used to perform these tragedies. If we have a look at where and how were these dramas performed, they were performed during the religious ceremonies held in the honor of god Dionysius. In this time, all the business would shut down. People would come and whole day they will stay at Dionysia and would watch all the dramas being performed. It was so important for them that even the prisoner were also released to watch those drama. Where these dramas were performed, you have a look at this clipping wherein you find the place, the amphitheater. Okay, it's an open air theater with the sitting arrangements where these dramas were performed. These dramas were performed where very less number of characters were there, actors were there, and much of the events in the drama were conveyed by the chorus. Now, what is chorus? If you have that question, we will explain it later on. Another thing, all the Greek actors, when they used to perform for this play or when they were acting, they were performing by wearing mask on their faces. So the dramas were performed with masks. These dramas were performed every morning. The performances started where three tragedies consecutively performed by the actors, and it ended with a satyr play. This went on and on for 3 days, and after 3 days the winner dramatist would be chosen. So whoever dramatist will be selected by the people as the most popular and the most efficient, the dramatist would be selected as a winner. Now, if we have a look at the characteristics of those Greek tragedies which have been performed at that time, written at that time, there are total 6 characteristics of those Greek tragedies. The first characteristic of Greek tragedy was the stories were already known to audience. આ બધી જ વાર્તાઓ હતી, જે ટ્રેજેડીઝની, આ બધી જ વાર્તાઓ કોઈ ને કોઈ ગ્રીક દેવતા અથવા તો એમની કોઈ દંતકથા એના પર આધારિત હતી. So all the stories were well known to audience. They were either from the stories of kings or princes or the gods. If we have a look at the second characteristic of Greek tragedy, there was a very strong religious element in the Greek drama. Why? Because these dramas were actually performed in the celebration of god Dionysus. So it was presented in the honor of the god. So there was a strong religious element. Although Greeks at that time did not believe in gods as real entities, as real persons, but they believed in some other forces which are at work in our lives. For example, they believed in Themis. Themis means moral law. They believed in Dike. Dike means there is an existence of divine justice in our life. They also believed in nemesis. Nemesis means element of fate, fortune, જેને આપણે નસીબ કહીએ. તો એવા એ ફોર્સીસમાં ગ્રીક્સ માનતા હતા. All these belief lies in the at the central line in these Greek tragedies. The third characteristic of Greek tragedy was a dislike for horror and violence on stage. Although Greek tragedies were full of all the kind of unlucky and unhappy events, but very less of it was shown on actual stage. No violence, no killing, no horror on the stage. Everything was done off the stage and it was conveyed to the audience by the means of messenger or the chorus. The next characteristic of Greek tragedy. Greek tragedies, they had very few actors. Initially, there were only 2 actors and a chorus. And when the tragedy was at its peak, there were always not more than 6 actors and a chorus of 50 people. Now, what is chorus? If we ask that question, then chorus was a group of people who conveyed many of the things in drama to the audience, who were at the backstage, and those who would sing and convey many of the things in the tragedy. Next characteristics of Greek tragedy was all the characters of Greek tragedy, they were not ordinary. They were above ordinary characters. They were kings, they were princes and heroes. Greeks did not know domestic tragedy. They did not know the characters like common people, like us. So all the stories belong to, high level characters, that is kings or princes or gods. We know Greeks have invented democracy, but the democracy is not reflected in their tragedies. The sixth characteristic of Greek tragedy was there was no mixing of comedy and tragedy. It was all pure tragedy. It had unity of action. There was no comic element, and it was having a single storyline. Now, it was not so that Greeks did not like comedy. Greeks did like comedy, but it was always shown at the end of the tragedy, that is trilogy, 3 tragedies consecutively, and after that there was a farcical play called satyr play, which was played separately at the end. But the main Greek tragedies did not show any kind of comic elements. Rather, they showed a one single story and without any comic elements. How can we forget Aristotle when we talk about Greek tragedy? Because Aristotle was the one living at the particular time where Greek tragedy was at its peak. What is Aristotle's contribution in Greek tragedy? He wrote a very small book. Its name is Poetics. His small book deals with literature in general and tragedy in particular. This book records all his thoughts about tragedies. Aristotle has provided many valuable insights on tragedy, but for us, for the students of literature, he asked 2 particular questions which are very important to understand the meaning of Greek tragedy. And these 2 questions are, the first one is, why do we get pleasure and satisfaction from seeing the theatre things we should certainly not enjoy in reality? That's a very important question. We don't like to see murders and violence and many kind of negative things in reality. Then why do we watch them in tragedy and we enjoy it? So his answer was also very important. He said that certain emotions which are not exercised in our real life, like pity and fear, they are not used enough in civilized life, which are used here. And tragedy stirs up this emotion, it collects this emotion and then it gives a vent to this emotion. So at the end of the tragedy, when we watch it, then we are free of those emotions, we feel relaxed, we feel very free, and this is the enjoyment value of a tragedy. And that is why the things which we don't like in real life, we actually enjoy while watching tragedy. He gave a particular word for tragedy. Its name is catharsis. What is catharsis? Catharsis is actually purgation, excretion of all the those kind of feelings which are not actually exercised in our real life. Aristotle's second question: what kind of person should be the hero of a tragedy? Aristotle gives a very good answer of this question. He says that the hero of the tragedy should be good. It should not be too good. He should be a person we admire and like, but there should be a kind of flaw, a fault, or a kind of error in his character. It can be an error of judgment, it can be an error of faith, or it can be a kind of substantial flaw, a fault, a mistake, an error of judgment in the character of the hero, so that when he meets his tragic end, it can be justified. So this fault is actually, he has given a technical name for it, and that is hamartia. Now what is hamartia? Hamartia is the fault of the protagonist which brings about his fall. It's a kind of weakness in the character of the protagonist. He gave this term keeping in mind Greek tragedy of his own time. But this word hamartia is useful to understand all the histories, all the tragedies of literature. May it be Greek, may it be Elizabethan, may it be modern. So hamartia is a weakness in the character of tragedy or protagonist of tragedy. We can have example in a modern literature also of hamartia. Then we can also have example in Shakespearean tragedy, and it is example of Hamlet. Shakespeare has written a very famous tragedy. It's the most important single work which is so well known in world literature. It is Hamlet. Its protagonist or its central character is Hamlet. Hamlet was Prince of Denmark. Hamlet did have a very good character. He was noble, he was well educated, he was very well mannered, very gentle and cultivated. But his only flaw or only weakness in his life was the indecisiveness. He could not take decision very fast, he could not take decisions on time, and that was the hamartia in the character of Hamlet. So friends, today we understood the concept of tragedy. What is the meaning of tragedy in literal sense, and what is its literary meaning? We also understood how Greek used to enjoy Greek drama and especially Greek tragedy. We also talked about three great dramatists of that time who wrote great Greek tragedies. We saw some of the characteristics of Greek tragedies. We also considered Aristotle and his theory of Greek tragedy, and we also saw about many other terms. At last, what we learnt, the terms, places, people and things from this lecture. That is, there are some towns to be known, some places to be known. Ancient Greece, Greece, as you know, is a country who was advanced before so much of time in philosophy, in education, and in literature. Then Dionysia. Dionysia is a place where Greek plays were performed in the worship of god Dionysus during the religious festivals. Protagonist. This word, it gives us the sense of hero, the main character of any drama. Then Themis. Themis means moral law, the values of morality, which plays a vital role in any person's life. Then Nemesis. Nemesis means destiny or a sense of fate, which plays a vital role in Greek tragedies. Then we also discuss Hamartia. Hamartia is kind of weakness in any person's life, which brings about his fall. Then we also discuss Dike. Dike means divine justice. We have also discussed satyrs, that is satyr play, that means comic plays. And the last, chorus. Chorus is a group of people who sing at the backstage and one who conveys the main elements of drama. Now I would like to play a video for you so that you can watch the actual image of Greek drama or Greek tragedy.
Of mythical heroes. These myths were not set in stone. Rather, each generation reinvented the old myths, telling the same old story from a new perspective or with a different emphasis. This constant reinterpretation kept the Greek myths fresh and relevant. In short, it brought myth to life. The Greeks called this process the theater. Theater played a central role in Greek culture. Any polis worth living in held annual theatrical festivals in honor of Dionysus. Yet theater would reach its apex in the Panathenaic Festival of Athens, in which the greatest playwrights competed to perform their works. The Greeks divided their theater into three genres: satyr plays, comedies, and tragedies. Satyr plays are the oldest sort of play. Satyrs are goat men, drinking buddies of Dionysus, and known for their promiscuous behavior. We know little about the early history of satyr plays, besides that they were part of a ritual to Dionysus, and that they were generally lewd and lowbrow. A lot of cod pieces and hitting people over the head with things. Imagine if the Three Stooges did a burlesque show, and you've got a pretty good idea of a satyr play. After the invention of tragedy and comedy, satyr plays continued to be performed during festivals to provide comic relief between the heavy tragedies. For centuries, scholars struggled to find something similar to Greek comedy. Luckily for us, Matt Stone and Trey Parker created South Park. Despite nearly 3,000 years separating the two, South Park is almost identical to Greek comedy. At the heart of both is the lampoon. To lampoon means to criticize using ridicule or sarcasm. Just as Matt and Trey mock the celebrities they hate, like Bono and Tom Cruise, so the comedians of ancient Greece poked fun at the celebrities of the day, making them look selfish, haughty, petty, and stupid. We actually get the word lampoon from the statesman Lampon, who was viciously ridiculed in several plays by the Athenian comedian Aristophanes. Like South Park, Greek comedians did not limit their lampooning to people. They also targeted ideas. Both used a method called reductio ad absurdum, literally a reduction to absurdity. We see the same pattern unfold in Aristophanes' The Birds and South Park's Margaritaville. Step 1. Take a common idea you find stupid. The birds. The gods eat the smoke of religious sacrifices. Margaritaville. The economy is punishing us. Step 2. Break that idea down to its most basic concepts. The birds. You could starve the gods by blocking the smoke. Margaritaville. The economy is a god of some sort. Step 3. Show how that basic idea becomes absurd if taken too seriously. In The Birds, Pisistratus convinces the birds to build a wall between heaven and earth and charge taxes on smoke. In Margaritaville, Stan's dad starts a cult of the economy, in which everyone wears sheets and plays with squirrels. In short, Greek comedy displays the same irreverence, the same scathing criticism, the same subtle moralizing, and even the same tendency towards toilet humor that characterizes South Park. All this comedy might not sound very religious, but passing moral judgment on ideas and people is essentially a religious matter. In this way, comedy was the most current and up-to-date branch of Greek religion. Yet some questions cannot be addressed so flippantly. Some ideas are timeless and cannot be dismissed, and some issues simply should not be laughed about. To address these deeper questions with the seriousness they deserved, the Greeks invented the most profound form of theater, the tragedy. Where Greek comedy is ridiculous, Greek tragedy is painfully serious. Tragedies examine mythical heroes from a moral perspective and find the heroes lacking. Despite all their virtues, every Greek hero suffers from the vice of hubris, or excessive pride. This pride leads them to believe things that are not true, and to do things that they should not do. Throughout the play, the chorus acts as the moral compass, telling the hero his beliefs are wrong, begging him to refrain from some disastrous action. Yet they are ignored. At the climax of every tragedy, the misguided beliefs and actions of the hero lead him to catastrophe. As he bemoans his fate, the chorus sings, "I told you so," and hammers home the moral. The morals vary from play to play, but they mostly follow a basic formula. Remember so-and-so? Remember how awesome he was? In his pride, he did such and such, and it destroyed him. Don't be like so-and-so. Don't do such and such. With this basic formula, Greek tragedians built and refined the morality of their culture. Equipped with this outline, let us look at the works of three great Athenian playwrights to see what kind of morals they tried to teach the people of Athens. The first of the three great tragedians was Aeschylus. Aeschylus lived from 525 to 455 BCE. In that time he wrote over 70 plays, of which 7 have survived. His most famous plays were part of a trilogy called the Oresteia. So let us plug the heroes of the Oresteia into our formula. Agamemnon was king of Mycenae. In his pride, he sacrificed his own daughter to ensure safe passage to Troy. He returned from Troy victorious, only to have his wife Clytemnestra murder him. Don't be like Agamemnon. Don't let ambition outweigh family. Clytemnestra was queen of Mycenae. In her pride, she took justice into her own hands and murdered her husband. Orestes, her son, was heir to the Mycenaean throne. In his pride, he took justice into his own hands and avenged his father Agamemnon by murdering his mother Clytemnestra. Orestes was then chased from his home by the Furies, spirits of vengeance and vendetta. Don't be like Clytemnestra and Orestes. Don't take justice into your own hands. Don't kill your own family. The cycle of violence and vengeance was brought to a halt when the Athenians, guided by Athena, held a trial. In the course of the trial, the Furies transformed from spirits of vengeance to the Eumenides, good spirits of reason and democracy. The moral? Don't be like those barbaric Mycenaeans, always killing their family members and carrying on feuds. Be like the Athenians, who settle their conflicts through trial by jury. Thus we see Aeschylus identifying a problem in mythology, the cycle of vengeance. He shows how it brings about disaster by killing off the entire family, and he offers an Athenian solution to the problem, a trial by jury. Thus, Aeschylus refined the morality of the Athenians. The next playwright in this succession is Sophocles. Sophocles lived from 497 to 406 BCE, writing a whopping 123 plays, of which 7 survive. His most famous plays are the Theban plays. We could plug Oedipus into our formula, but I think we'll leave that to Freud. Best to focus on the last of the Theban plays, Antigone. Let's look at our formula. Creon is king of Thebes. In his pride, he forbids Antigone to bury her brother, since he was a traitor. Unwilling to forsake her duty to her brother, Antigone buries him anyway. In his pride, Creon locks Antigone up. Antigone kills herself. Her fiancé, Creon's own son, kills himself out of grief. Creon valued the state over family and was left with no family at all. The moral? Don't be like Creon. Don't try to put the law of the state above the laws of family. Thus we see a further refinement. Aeschylus distinguished the justice of vengeance from the justice of law. Sophocles distinguished the laws of the state from the laws of family. The final tragedian of the triad is Euripides. Euripides lived from 480 to 406 BCE. He wrote over 90 plays, of which 18 survive. These plays are so wonderful it is difficult to pick just one. But time is of the essence, so we will look at Euripides' last surviving play, the Bacchae. Pentheus was king of Thebes. In his pride, he refused to recognize the new god, Dionysus. In his pride, he insults the mother of Dionysus. In his pride, he forbids his people to worship Dionysus, because he finds the rites barbaric and uncivilized. In his pride, he attempts to capture the gods. In his pride, he spies on the rites of Dionysus. And for his pride, Pentheus dies horribly, torn limb from limb by his own mother, who plays catch with balls of his flesh. Don't be like Pentheus. Don't deny new gods, and don't become so civilized that you forget you're an animal. Euripides' Bacchae marks the apex of civilization. Where Aeschylus was trying to civilize the Athenians, and Sophocles was trying to refine that civilization, Euripides has come full circle, calling into question the very nature of civilization itself. Thus we've seen how Athenian theater constantly redefined Athenian religion and culture. With tragedians busy creating new morals and comedians ridiculing outdated ones, Athenian culture stayed relevant and dynamic. Guided by the constantly updated morals of their theater, the Athenians would go on to establish democracy and take philosophy to new vistas.
Okay, so today, friends, we saw Greek tragedy. How Greek tragedians in those days wrote tragedies of power and beauty. Not only that, Aeschylus was there, Sophocles and Euripides. We cannot forget Aristotle, who gave a powerful theory on Greek tragedy. Greek tragedy has its powerful influence on all the literature to come. Roman plays were very highly influenced by Greek tragedy. All the Elizabethan drama was very powerfully influenced by Greek tragedy. Not only that, modern theatre is also not untouched by the influence of Greek tragedy. Thank you.
Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.